Imagine a teenage girl, our age or younger, being raped and then denied the right to choose what she wants to do with her body afterwards. This is the sad truth of many American women after the overturning of Roe v. Wade. Over 70,000 people couldn't get an abortion in their home state after this overturning.
Barry Moran, who has covered the Supreme Court for years, and he's at the court tonight.
At the Supreme Court today, an historic upheaval. In a sweeping ruling that overturned a half a century of precedents, 5 justices ended the right of American women to choose abortion under the Constitution. The court
Now I'm going to be talking about Supreme Court cases that have influenced women's reproductive rights in America. Griswold versus Connecticut was a landmark Supreme Court case that dealt with the privacy of reproductive rights. There was a Connecticut law that prohibited the use of contraceptives even if married, and Estelle Griswold, the executive of Planned Parenthood League of Connecticut, and Dr. Lee Buxton opened a birth control clinic in New Haven, which violated this law. The Supreme Court case, in a 7-2 decision, deemed the law unconstitutional. This was extremely influential because the year was 1965 and women already did not have many rights in America and definitely had no reproductive rights. This was one of the first Supreme Court cases to ever discuss women's reproductive rights and definitely the first to abolish a rule that took away their rights. Another Supreme Court case that invoked controversy and activism on women's reproductive rights is Bigelow versus Virginia. In 1975, this started because of the Virginia law that prohibited the publication of abortion services. David Bigelow published an advertisement offering information about abortion services in New York. David was convicted of this law and fined for it. He appealed, claiming that the law violated the First Amendment. Overall, the Supreme Court ruled in his favor in a 5-4 decision and agreed that the Virginia law did infringe on the First Amendment protection of freedom and speech of press. This Supreme Court case was influential beyond reproductive rights for women. It also made it official that commercial speech is protected under the First Amendment. This created freedom of speech in so many industries in America. A Supreme Court case that affects access to in vitro fertilization. There were 3 couples who all had IVF at a fertility clinic in Alabama and gave birth to healthy babies through IVF. They also had additional fertilized embryos that they didn't use but were kept frozen in storage for possible use at a later date. In late 2020, somebody mistakenly opened the sub-freezing compartment where the frozen eggs were stored, burned himself, and dropped the embryos, making them unusable. The couples who produced these embryos filed a lawsuit for the wrongful death of a minor, which in Alabama is a state statute. The first court ruled that the embryos were not children. They appealed to the Alabama Supreme Court, which ruled that frozen embryos do have personhood. This decision allowed the couples to seek damages for the wrongful death of their children. Although it is technically not illegal to freeze eggs in Alabama at the moment, the ruling has caused many fertility clinics to cut back on their services because they don't want to be held liable and responsible for frozen embryos to be considered people. The irony of this situation is very clear. In a place like Alabama, a 15-year-old who accidentally becomes pregnant, even by sexual assault, and does not want the baby, cannot have an abortion and is forced to have the baby. And a 45-year-old woman who desperately wants a child and is ready to have one in every way, financially and mentally, cannot use in vitro fertilization, IVF, to do so. Before this Alabama ruling, all the rights to the embryos belonged to the people who created it, as they should. In this case, the Supreme Court demonstrates that now the state has control over the embryo. The executive branch, including the president, cannot overturn a state ruling. Only the U.S. Supreme Court can do that. Some experts suggest that it could be even illegal to freeze embryos to begin with because they are people and you can't freeze people. Do you agree with this? After the overturning of Roe v. Wade, abortion access across America has become limited. Since Roe v. Wade was overturned, 14 states in America have banned abortion and 25,000 fewer abortions in clinics since the Supreme Court decision was made. I expect that the amount of states that ban abortion will increase and there will be a consistent decrease in abortion clinics and contraceptives across America. Currently, several states in the Southeast are essential for abortion access. Some states are debating whether or not to ban abortion completely. If these states do, then it will completely cut off abortion access to all of the Southeast. Because of the access to abortion decreasing, I do also predict that many women who are pregnant and want an abortion but don't have access to will try at-home abortions. This is a very dangerous and life-threatening act that desperate women will do if they cannot gain access to abortion clinics. You may ask, why should we care about this topic? 51% of citizens in America are women, 53% of women are raped in their lifetime, and 1 out of every 6 American women has been molested in their lifetime. Even the small percentage of people who have life-threatening complications during their pregnancy should have the right to choose if they want to live or die trying to have a child. The overturning of Roe v. Wade stripped 51% of our population's reproductive rights away, and the right to choose what you want to do with your body is a human right that nobody should have to fight for.